Football's at its best when there's a controversy one way or another, because it gets everyone talking and it gives us storylines to follow for seasons to come. And nothing stirs up more controversy in football than when a star player makes a shocking move to a rival club. We all like to assume that the players that are employed by our favorite teams are all here because they love the club and they want to be here forever. Realistically, this only really applies to a handful of players throughout time. Guys like Gerrard, Totti, Maldini, and Giggs are often used as a barometer for what a one club player can mean to a team. They're all players who stay there not only the entire time, but were able to produce countless iconic moments that will be probably etched in football history forever. Most players just fall under the category of those who want to just collect their paycheck and give their best that they can to the team that they're playing for at the moment. They stay at the club anywhere from 2 to 5 years, give it their all, and then usually move on to somewhere else. But then you have the villains, the real bag chasers, the real dogs of football, or generally the guys who realize that loyalty won't win them anything in life. Interestingly enough, we don't really see players like this anymore, and it's probably due to how social media and generally all media kind of affects players now. But in the past, there's a lot of examples of guys who switched up on the teams that they were on for better pastures. Guys like Figo, Ashley Cole, Carlos Tevez, and Robin van Persie are all players you can't talk about without discussing the move that started their villain arcs, and whose moves sent shockwaves through the footballing world. And real quick, boys, if you're enjoying the content, enjoying the video, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. We're dropping weekly football videos, so hit that notification bell so you don't miss an upload. And of course, boys, if you're not new to the channel, welcome back. Glad to have you around for another video. So with that being said, boys, let's get into all these guys and the crazy moves that they made from one team to their direct rivals. So real quick, I want to imagine your club has the best player in the world in the squad, and not just a club cult hero, but I'm talking about the best player in the world. Life is great. You have a player who week in and week out absolutely puts on a show for everyone. Now imagine that player decides to sign for your biggest rivals for a record-breaking transfer fee out of nowhere. Well, that's what happened with Barcelona in the year 2000, where Luis Figo would sign for Real Madrid for 60 million euros, which at the time felt like it came from absolutely nowhere. See, Figo had just spent 5 years at Barcelona, where he quickly became the best player in the world. Having been part of Barcelona squads that featured players like Ronaldo Nazario, Patrick Kluivert, Rivaldo, Stoichkov, and Pep Guardiola, it'd be Luis Figo who constantly grabbed headlines through his phenomenal ability. Having secured 2 La Liga titles, 2 Copa del Reyes, a UEFA Winners' Cup, and a Supercopa de España, it was clear that he was part of this winning system and culture, where not only did he have the adoration of Barcelona fans, but he reciprocated the love back, even going as far as dyeing his hair blue and red after securing a La Liga title to show where his allegiances lied. Having won the Ballon d'Or in the year 2000, in stepped Real Madrid and Florentino Perez to do what else but make Barcelona's life a living hell, because they eyed Figo and they wanted him bad. Interestingly enough, one of the main reasons why Figo would ultimately decide to leave Barcelona is something that we see that's still affecting the club to this day: finances. With Figo in need of a new contract at Barcelona and having just won the Ballon d'Or to establish himself as the best player in the world, the situation reached a stalemate between the two parties because Barcelona really couldn't meet Figo's demands. For Real Madrid, Fiorentino was able to take advantage of this by not only meeting the financial demands of Figo and his agent, but also promising Figo a lucrative future as they were about to begin their Galactico initiative that would bring more stars into the club, which in turn would bring more success. So on July 16th, 2000, Figo would sign for Real Madrid and instantly became public enemy number 1 in Barcelona. When Figo returned to the Camp Nou for a Clásico, Barcelona fans would throw a real pig's head at Figo as he went to take a corner, which well and truly signified he would never be getting back into the club's good graces. He'd go on to win a few more La Ligas and a Champions League with Real Madrid, but all things considered, Figo's move to Madrid probably never really panned out how he really expected it to. And it's not like his success at that club was much more different than what he did with Barcelona. But at the end of the day, money talks. And boy did money talk when Ashley Cole violated Arsenal in 2006. So Ashley Cole, for those who don't know, for those who might be too young to remember this guy for anything other than a FIFA icon card, was widely regarded as one of, if not the best left back in world football in the early to mid 2000s. His defensive ability was unparalleled and he was a vital part of Arsenal's 01-02 and invincible title. What made Cole's world-class ability even sweeter for Arsenal fans was the fact that he was a local lad. He not only supported Arsenal but actually came through the academy as well before making his debut, and clearly he'd go on to be a vital part of the club's success in that period. But as time went on for Cole at Arsenal, the wheels slowly began to fall off. With more and more world-class players leaving Arsenal, Cole felt that nothing was being done to remedy the situation, and he was looking to join those who were leaving the club. For Cole, he wanted to remain in a competitive environment, and Arsenal just wasn't giving that to him after their last title win. In his eye, Cole had to act fast. So in a very shady act of business in January 2005, Cole would actually have a secret meeting with Chelsea and Mourinho where they discussed a potential transfer, all while Arsenal had no clue. Powers that be would eventually find out about this meeting and all parties involved would be fined and Cole's agent would be suspended for 18 months. After this, Cole would actually go on to sign a 1-year extension at Arsenal, so he would stay there for the 05-06 season, but he didn't really feature much. He only played a handful of games really in the grand scheme of things. In fact, this season where they finished in a very underwhelming 4th place, Cole felt that he was scapegoated for Arsenal's struggles, which only led to more of a rift between him and the club. So after all this drama, secret meetings, Cole getting shadow banned essentially from the Arsenal squad, eventually negotiations between the club became public information in July of 2006. With Cole eventually signing for Chelsea on August 31st, 2006 for €5 million and William Gallas. From here on out, Arsenal fans would hate Ashley Cole. They started to call him Ashley Cole. Why? Because in their eyes specifically, he was a greedy little rat. And mind you, Arsenal had just offered Cole a €55,000 a week contract that he would turn down in favor of his move to Stamford Bridge. Cole would go on to win 9 major trophies with Chelsea, which would be 2 more than what he was able to do with Arsenal, somewhat starting a trend of players leaving Arsenal and becoming more successful elsewhere. And while Cole's story of joining a direct rival more so came from a monetary and a competitive standpoint, if we take a look at Carlos Tevez' infamous transfer, it more so just comes from not feeling wanted. Haven't we all been there once or twice? Here we go. As a United fan talking about past glory, please allow it, we're in the trenches right now. So after spending 2 seasons at United, Carlos Tevez would do the unthinkable and made a move to an up-and-coming Manchester City side. And for Cole, he felt justified in moving to Chelsea because Arsenal was starting to fall behind the competition, especially behind the big 6 clubs. But Tevez was leaving one of the best United teams of all time. And as many of us know, Tevez was part of that legendary attacking trio that including himself, Rooney, and Ronaldo. This group of players would go on to terrify pretty much every single team in the league, and they were damn near unstoppable. In just the 2 seasons that they played together, they would put up a total of 92 goals as a trio, while obtaining 2 Premier League titles, an EFL Cup, and a Champions League in the meanwhile. So where did it all go wrong for Tevez? Honestly, this move was probably destined to just go wrong pretty much from when it started. See, Tevez was actually brought to United on a 2-year loan instead of a permanent transfer. Of course, he hit the ground running and he would become a fan favorite at United. And also on top of that, Fergie would claim that he hoped to make the transfer permanent for Tevez because of what he had seen on the pitch and what he was able to offer for the club. Even as far as going as promising Carlos Tevez that he had a place in the team just for him once we made that transfer permanent. But unfortunately for Tevez, that offer pretty much never came, and once it did finally land in front of him, it was too little too late. Before his second season kicked off at United, the club would bring in Dimitar Berbatov, which instantly rubbed Carlos Tevez the wrong way. Subsequently, he would go on to feature less in the following campaign, which soured things even more. With Man City having just been acquired by Sheikh Mansour, he identified Tevez as the exact player to sign that would send a message to United that their neighbors were here and were not going to be messing around anymore. And for Tevez, this would be the perfect opportunity to stick it to Sir Alex and to United for not showing him the love that he felt that he deserved. So with his mindset on the move, there was no stopping him. The day before the Champions League final between Barcelona and United, Tevez would let Fergie know that he was moving to City. United would go on to lose this match, and on July 14th, 2009, Tevez would sign for City for €47 million, an absolutely embarrassing course of events for United all around. Tevez would go on to win a couple of trophies with Man City, but in the long run, the transfer really never panned out. And that's definitely a story for another day, but because of how United treated Tevez so poorly, we missed out on what could have been a guy who could have stayed at the club for a while at United and became an all-timer there, but instead he made his move because he was not wanted. Of course, I'm sure everyone's been there sometime or another. But with all that being said, United would eventually get their lick back against City while also screwing over another direct rival. I'm sure you guys know where this is going, because in 2012, United would pull off their version of Figo to Real Madrid with Robin van Persie. Long story short, Robin van Persie had become a legend at Arsenal. Short story long, up to the point of his departure, he had played 278 games for the club while scoring 132 goals and assisting 56. Having joined the club the year after the invincible season, Van Persie would prove himself to be useful for Arsenal, initially as a playmaker and eventually becoming an elite number 9 who was at points considered one of the best strikers in the world. So if anything, this is a little bit worse than Figo to Madrid if we look at the direct context of the clubs, because this guy had been at Arsenal for 8 seasons. He was well and truly a major figure at Arsenal, at least until Sir Alex came calling. For both Van Persie and for Fergie, this was a win-win situation. For Fergie, bringing in Robin van Persie would allow him to regain the edge over his noisy neighbors, who in the 2011-12 season would win their first ever Premier League title in dramatic like fashion, as Fergie's side would fall just short. So by bringing in a player of the caliber of Van Persie, there'd be a good chance that United would capture their 20th trophy. And for Van Persie, this would be his opportunity to become a Premier League champion. As good as he was for Arsenal, all he had to show for it was an FA Cup and a Community Shield. This was going to be his opportunity to capture the grand prize. Additionally, Van Persie and Arsenal were never really able to come to terms with a new contract, which made it significantly easier for United to swoop in for the Dutchman. And when United did come knocking for Van Persie, his inner child was crying out for him to join the best team in England, so he would ultimately sign on August 15th, 2012 for 22.5 million euros. And the rest truly is history, as Robin Van Persie would go on to have a phenomenal campaign while leading United to Premier League glory in Fergie's final season in charge. And the story couldn't have been written any better, except it could get just a little bit better, because once United did have the title wrapped up, Arsenal would have to give their former teammate of guard of honor at the Emirates, finalizing the humiliation for Arsenal and adding Robin Van Persie to the list of players who left Arsenal to become more successful, and also adding him to the list of guys that Robbie TV would probably want to scrap up. If we take a look at all these transfers, they're all crazy. You have a player who was probably at their peak moving to their direct rivals, bar Robin Van Persie, who was maybe a little bit older, a little bit past his peak, but still was able to turn the clock back. And we're looking at Barca to Madrid, Arsenal to United, Arsenal to Chelsea, United to City. These are major moves. These are moves that we don't really see happen anymore, unless it's some really young player or some really old player that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, like with Raheem Sterling to Arsenal. You know, moves like that just no one really cares about. The closest thing that we've really gotten to that is Cole Palmer moving to Chelsea, but even then his move wasn't really, in the grand scheme of things, insane, because no one knew what he would go on to become. So it's either players are just too scared to move nowadays, or they really just think about it and say, hey, you know what, I don't want to get abused on social media just because I'm chasing a bag and I'm chasing rings. But you know what, I wouldn't be opposed to these type of transfers happening again. So Haaland, Kevin De Bruyne, if you want to join United, the door is always open.